Quick, to the Batcave! DrBright cried, reaching for his utility belt. But there was no time. He couldn't get his hand on his grappling hook before the guard tackled him to the ground. But how did we get here? How did DrBright wind up apprehended by the Red Right Hand while dressed in a Halloween store Batman costume? Well, it's a long story, but it all started a few weeks ago. You see, DrBright was watching Justice League. No, not that one. No, not that one either. He was watching the animated series from 2001. He loves superhero cartoons, and always had since he was a little kid. Of course, he could barely remember his childhood a lot of the times these days. He wondered if that was a side effect of changing bodies so many times, if his memories were fading with each new host he took. But then he shook off the thought and immersed himself in a world of brightly colored costumes, impossible feats of heroism, and adventures in the fight against evil and injustice. Things were simple here. Things were safe. If only his life could be like that. If he could be some kind of superhero fighting alongside a crew of other special individuals dedicated to high-minded ideals like truth, justice, and a better world for all. But why couldn't his life be like that? What was stopping him from forming a Justice League of his very own? He was sad, lonely, and had no contact with his immediate family. He had tons of resources at his disposal, even if most of those resources didn't technically belong to him. When he thought about it, there wasn't much difference between him and Batman. All he needed was a costume and a team, and he already had last Halloween's outfit ready to go in his closet. But before he could recruit the rest of his SCP Foundation Justice League, DrBright needed one more thing that Batman had, and he didn't: a butler. Fortunately, he knew exactly where to find one. He retrieved SCP-662 from its storage locker and shook it, producing a soft chime. Immediately, Mr. Deeds appeared, ready to attend to any task at hand. "Good afternoon, DrBright. How may I be of service?" the butler asked. "Well, Mr. Deeds, you're going to help me build a team." If DrBright was Batman, then the first thing he needed to do was identify his Superman. Who could be the Man of Steel to his caped Crusader? There was one obvious answer, really. A man with metal arms and legs who could withstand any damage done to him. It would have to be SCP-073, Kane. While Mr. Deeds was pitching Kane on the idea, DrBright got to work on brainstorming his next pick. He needed someone with reality warping powers, someone who could make objects appear out of thin air, teleport from one place to another. There was no one he knew who could do that better than God himself. SCP-343. When presented with the chance to do battle against the forces of evil, he was more than willing to join the team. While DrBright was trying to decide on his next chosen teammate, he received an unexpected visitor. Cactus Man stopped by the Hall of Justice, also known as DrBright's office, and begged to be given a place in the League. He wasn't exactly a Martian or a Manhunter, but this was DrBright's own unique spin on the old formula, so it couldn't hurt to deviate just a little bit. Besides, Cactus Man looked so sad when he asked to join in, and he couldn't say no to that face. Of course, DrBright wasn't about to forget his second favorite superhero, just behind Batman. He needed a Wonder Woman. But who could compare to a super powerful Amazon from an all-female island? There wasn't anyone with a lasso of truth, but he did know a perfectly sweet candidate. She wouldn't be too thrilled to work with a man, but when he offered to swap her nasty sugar substitute meals for the real thing, Miss Sweetie was perfectly delighted to join in. He had dominion over land covered, but DrBright supposed he needed someone who could handle more aquatic missions. An adept swimmer, perhaps with the ability to talk to fish, even command them. He knew just the guy to talk to. "You've got the wrong idea, pal," Mr. Fish sighed. "I don't have any special powers. I'm just a guy from Boston with a fish head. That's my whole bag. Sorry." Fortunately, DrBright had a backup. So, with Mr. Fish refusing to take part, he turned to his second choice, SCP-054. Who better to help with water-based conflicts than someone made entirely out of water herself? The final member of the team was SCP-2094, Motormouth. To be completely honest, DrBright mainly picked him because he was funny, and because his name already kind of sounded like the name of a superhero. Was it shallow? Yes. Did DrBright care? Absolutely not. DrBright was so occupied with the task of forming his League of Heroes that he didn't stop to consider that every force for good needs an equal opposite. Just as you cannot have light without darkness, it is also true that every hero needs a villain. Enter Dr. Alto Clef. As the day went on, Dr. Clef had caught wind of his colleague's little plan and decided not to let DrBright have all the fun. He was forming a team of his own, a Legion of Doom every bit as powerful, with a taste for mischief and destruction. He fancied himself the SCP Foundation's very own Lex Luthor, a dapper genius with the necessary power and leadership skills to run an eventual evil empire. After all, he'd already worked for the GOC before working with the Foundation. Maybe he should try his hand at being his own diabolical boss for once. He would be the brains of the operation, to be sure, but he would need some muscle to back him up. Someone to help physically intimidate any foes, to crush obstacles that might stand in his way. SCP-076-2, the immortal warrior known as Abel, would do nicely. His superhuman strength, speed, and resilience to pain and shock made for the perfect guy to call on if the boss needed a steel door ripped off its hinges, or someone to punch through a concrete wall. Dr. Clef had him flown in, and once Abel was presented with the promise of as much violence as his bloodthirsty heart desired, he was thrilled to call himself a member of the SCP Legion of Doom. Just as it had with DrBright's plan, word of Dr. Clef's nefarious scheme began to spread like wildfire. Naturally, he began to attract some volunteers. That was to be expected. What Dr. Clef did not expect, however, was the sight of SCP-082, straining the seams of a purple suit with his enormous stature. A vivid green wig perched on the top of his head. His face was smeared with makeup, the white base paint of a clown, and a wide, garish red mouth.
"Do you want to know how I got these scars?"
he asked with a wild cackle. "Nice costume." Dr. Clef nodded approvingly.
"What costume?"
Ferdinand replied.
"It is me. I am the Joker. I finished destroying Gotham City like I wanted to. All done with that, so now I'm looking for a new job. Want to see a magic trick?"
He pulled a pencil out of his pocket, and Dr. Clef snatched it out of his hand. "Not right now, but come on in. Let's make a little mayhem." One of Dr. Clef's favorite villains of all time was Two-Face, a formerly good man, fallen from grace, transformed into a capricious monster deciding a victim's fate with the toss of a coin. He didn't know anyone with two faces at the Foundation, but he did know of one anomaly that was capable of having any face in the world, as long as it was beautiful. A bit of flattery was enough to win over SCP-056, though they still made it clear they were joining out of the kindness of their heart. "I'm far too good for this nonsense, but I'm bored, so I'll give it a try anyway." Next, Dr. Clef supplied the meanest mask around, SCP-035, the possessive mask, with a special treat, a temporary body, in the form of a life-size action figure of the Riddler. "Know any good riddles?" he asked as he placed the mask over the figure's plastic face. It grinned at him, black slime dripping from its open mouth.
"The person who built it sold it. The person who bought it never used it. The person who used it never saw it. What is it?"
Dr. Clef shrugged.
"Final hint, anyone who opposes me will end up inside of one."
The mask's smile seemed to widen. Dr. Clef laughed suddenly as the answer occurred to him. A coffin. This was going to be fun. Wanting a man with the knowledge of medical science on his side, not to mention a touch that could stop a heart instantly, Dr. Clef attempted to recruit the Plague Doctor, but he wouldn't accept the offer, insisting he had far too much work to attend to, and he would never want to join a team that, quote, the Infernal Mask was part of in the first place. With both groups assembled, the SCP Justice League and the SCP Legion of Doom, there was only one thing left to do: let the two sides battle it out, and see just who would triumph in the end. As DrBright sat at the head of the table in his hall of SCP Justice, preparing to begin the first official meeting of his super team, a rock crashed through the window of the room. Wrapped around it was a note, made from letters cut out of magazines and pasted onto paper to form new words: "Come out and play." A direct challenge from his new arch-nemesis, no doubt. There was no time to waste. The team had to suit up and prepare to face off against the forces of evil. DrBright pulled on his Batman costume, silently cursing himself for not springing for the real drivable Batmobile when he had the chance. But now was not the time for Bat regrets. Now was the time for action. "Mr. Deeds!" He rang the bell.
"Yes, sir?"
The butler appeared. "Please fetch the rest of the team their uniforms." Within moments, they were dressed for action in the technicolor attire of bona fide superheroes. Sure, some costumes were too small, others were too large, and Cactus Man spikes kept poking holes in the spandex, but DrBright thought they all looked perfect. The SCP Justice League burst into the SCP Legion of Doom's headquarters, formerly known as the Canteen, where they found Dr. Clef and his army of baddies waiting.
Riddle me this,
The mask called out.
the poor have it, the rich need it. If you eat it, you die, and it is the only thing that can stop me. What is it?
Oh, I know the answer.
Ferdinand piped up.
It is nothing.
Well, aren't you clever? A beautiful person snarked.
I was promised I would get to do some stabbing.
Abel growled. Ready to give up now, Bright? Dr. Clef asked.
Never!
DrBright cried. And what was perhaps the most bizarre, petty, and unnecessary battle between a pair of man-children and their homegrown super squads began. DrBright and Dr. Clef themselves were, of course, at the front lines, engaging in a somewhat embarrassing bare-knuckle brawl on the dirty tile floor. Nearby, their violent army began duking it out on their behalf. Ferdinand, still dressed as the Joker, began duking it out with Kane, who tried to encourage the giant cannibal to take a non-violent route. Ferdinand, true to his diabolical costume spirit, didn't listen to reason, and instead tried to bite Kane. This was a terrible move, as Ferdinand quickly realized when his own bite marks began appearing on the fabric of his cheap purple suit. That did not stop him from trying again, and again, and again. Next came the obligatory superhero movie cliché of the two token female supers pairing off to fight each other in the way that feels oddly condescending. SCP-056 was duking it out with the Water Nymph and Miss Sweetie, whose diabolical ability to make others feel terrible about themselves through relentless one-upsmanship was being blunted by the Water Nymph and Miss Sweetie bolstering each other's self-esteem with compliments and mutual emotional support. Eventually, this frustrated SCP-056 so much so that she got frustrated and stormed away, like the unpleasant, entitled bully she is. Meanwhile, despite the fact that Cactus Man was fighting valiantly, the evil powers of SCP-035 were too much for him. The mask was wrapping its stolen hands around Cactus Man's thorny throat and squeezing, slowly making it harder for him to breathe. The mask gave an evil cackle and said,
Silly little boy playing hero. What a waste of a life. Don't worry, boy. As one of my hosts, you'll finally be part of something worthwhile.
I'll never give in to you, villain.
Cactus Man chokes out.
You don't have a choice, my boy.
We always have a choice, said a calm, fatherly voice, the voice of SCP-343. With a flick of his immensely powerful wrist, 035 was sent sailing across the room, whacking him against the wall. His melting host body splattered from the impact, and the mask clattered down to the ground.
Drat!
The mask yelled.
Foiled again!
Abel was having an extremely frustrating battle with Motormouth. He produced a plethora of obsidian blades from his pocket dimension and began tossing them at the anomalous Carney at incredible speeds. However, Abel was not aware that in addition to Motormouth's ability to stretch his jaw and shamelessly swallow anything, his time with Herman Fuller's Circus of the Disquieting had also made him an expert juggler. He was able to catch each of Abel's blades and swallow them effortlessly.
Stop doing that!
Abel fumed.
It is dishonorable.
With chaos unfolding all around them, DrBright and Dr. Clef stopped fighting to take in the majesty of their co-created travesty. SCPs kicking the tar out of each other all over the Site-19 canteen. It was truly something to behold, and certainly a fun way to kill an afternoon. You know, Dr. Clef locked eyes with Bright. We're not so different, you and I. But before he could finish the rest of his truly epic speech, an armed guard kicked down the door, and the members of MTF Alpha-1, the Red Right Hand, began pouring into the room. They tackled Bright and Dr. Clef to the ground, and set about neutralizing any other threats in the room. Some anomalies returned to their containment chambers willingly, like Ferdinand, sprinting down the hall at a surprisingly fast pace and insisting,
It was peer pressure, you see. I never wanted to.
Others, like Abel, refused to go back down, slashing his sword wildly and taking out a dozen guards before he was recontained. So we find ourselves back to where we started, with a whim in the shape of the bat signal, with a moment of great triumph, followed by a swift descent into failure, and a mobile task force member putting Dr. Clef in handcuffs. Luckily, the two doctors wouldn't be thrown into Arkham for letting their imagination get the better of them, though their egos and bodies were a bit bruised, they would be free to fight another day. O5-1, the long-suffering chairman of the O5 Council, released a memo regarding the matter, which was delivered to both DrBright and Dr. Clef during their disciplinary hearings. We'll allow that memo to play us out.
I wish I could say I was surprised. Did your mothers not hug you enough as children? Did people not pay enough attention to you? Jack, Alto, to the best of my knowledge, you are a pair of grown bloody men, working for the most powerful and vital anti-anomaly organization in the world, where you, terrifyingly, have positions of considerable influence. Act like it! And please know that if I catch wind of anything like this happening again, I will have both of you encased in cement. Now, get back to work, you idiots!
Now go check out SCP Edition, Weirdest Things on Amazon, DrBright's great idea, and hilarious list of things DrBright is not allowed to do for more wacky antics from the lovably deranged DrBright.